GBNews, Britain's news channel.
Hello there and happy Monday to you. It's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. We've only got 3 days to go, everybody. Thank goodness for that. The Lib Dem leader, Ed Davey, today bungee jumping. I mean, come on now. Do these antics actually convince you to vote for the likes of Lib Dem or not? Also, Starmer says that if he becomes Prime Minister, he will regularly stop work at 6 p.m. and have family time. Is this a good idea? Or quite frankly, if you want work-life balance, should you be doing a different job? You tell me. And an earthquake in Europe. Macron's gamble to call a spontaneous election has, to put it mildly, gone wrong. The extremes at both ends of the scale have smashed his party. What do you make to it all? And at Glastonbury, it wasn't just the audience crowd surfing. Oh no, a Banksy artwork depicting a small boat packed with migrants passed along the crowd to, you guessed it, cheers. Apparently it was legendary, historic and epic. Can you imagine if that took place at a Reform UK rally? Your thoughts on all of that? All of that and a lot more before 7 o'clock. But first, tonight, 6 o'clock news headlines.
Michelle, thank you, and good evening to you. Well, the top story from the GB newsroom tonight is that Rishi Sunak says a victory for Labour in this week's election would see Britain's borders become the soft touch of Europe. Campaigning in Oxfordshire today, the Prime Minister insisted flights to Rwanda are an essential deterrent for illegal migrants coming into Britain and warned other parties have failed to put forward credible alternatives.
It is a deterrent. It's very simple. I don't think illegal migrants should get to stay in our country. They should be removed to a safe alternative. That is the only way to stop people coming in the first place. That's what you'll get if I'm your Prime Minister. A vote for anyone else just means that we are going to become the soft touch of Europe when it comes to illegal migration. We've had 2 debates head-to-head, and anyone who's watched them would have seen that Keir Starmer just simply can't answer the question. What would he do with illegal migrants that come to our country? He doesn't have a plan. I have a plan.
Rishi Sunak. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer says he'll have to make tough choices to deal with a very difficult inheritance if he wins power on Thursday. The Conservatives are warning against handing Labour what they're calling a supermajority amid polls giving Labour a 20-point lead. But the Labour leader says a clear mandate is needed to repair Britain's economy and warns apathy could lead to another 5 years of the Conservatives.
And this has to be a summer of change. That's our one job this summer, a summer of change. And so whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living crisis for months and years on end with bills bearing down on you, whether you're a business that's struggled because of the damage that's been done to the economy, or whether you've served your country in uniform or in your community, then this campaign, this positive Labour campaign, is for you, and the fight for change is for you.
Sir Keir Starmer. Well, in news abroad, in fact, in the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled that former presidents are immune from prosecution for some actions taken while in office. That decision throws out a judicial decision that rejected Donald Trump's bid to shield himself from criminal charges related to his attempt to overturn his 2020 election loss. Today's decision means that former presidents can be immune for actions taken within their constitutional authority, but not for actions they may take in a private capacity. The actor Sir Ian McKellen has pulled out of his national tour of the West End production of Player Kings. In a statement today, he said that after doctored advice, he decided to step down from the play with what he called the greatest reluctance. It comes after he fell off the stage during a recent performance in London's West End. He does assure ticket holders, though, that his replacement and the production remain as dazzling as ever. In France, the populist right-wing National Rally Party has taken more than 30% of the vote in the country's snap election, putting it on the cusp of forming a government. The first round of voting is a huge setback for President Macron, whose centrist Alliance Party trailed in third place with just 20% of that vote. If the current momentum continues, it could see the populist right-wing party, incidentally led by Marine Le Pen, rise to power for the first time since the Second World War. That final outcome will depend on days of negotiations, though, between the parties before next week's runoff vote. Lots of analysts now saying there'll be a hung parliament in France as a result. Here in the UK, the average house price was up by 0.2% in June, as higher mortgage rates kept many people off the property ladder. It means the average cost of a home across the UK is just over £266,000, which is 1.5% more than last year. According to the index, which was by the Nationwide Group, earnings growth has performed better than the property market in recent years, but it hasn't been enough to offset the recent spike in mortgage costs. Just one last story for you about Jude Bellingham. The England player is being investigated over a gesture he made during England's win over Slovakia in the Euros last night. The England footballer facing a probe over a potential breach of the basic rules of decent conduct, we're told. It's understood to relate to Bellingham, if I may say, grabbing his crotch after scoring England's equaliser in added time of the match. Harry Kane, of course, going on to score another goal in extra time, securing the happiness of Englishmen across the land. Those are the latest GB News headlines from the newsroom. I'm back in an hour with more. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, Polly. Tell me at home, by the way, what did you think to that? Did you see the gesture? I won't reference what the gesture was. It is a tea time show. I don't want to make your hair curl, everybody. What do you think to it? A storm in a teacup or fair that they're investigating him for it? Tell me your thoughts on that. I am Michelle Dewberry and I am with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, got a new face to this show. Well, new face whilst I've been here is the former Labour MP, Sean Simon. Good evening to you. You've done this once before, but you didn't have the pleasure of my company. I was on holiday.
It wasn't the same.
I know. We don't know yet. You might actually be regretting my return back to the panel. Also alongside me, I've not seen his face for a while, the live peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. Good evening.
Good evening, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Well. And you know the drill, it's not just about us three. It is about you guys at home as well. So what is on your mind tonight? All the usual ways, email gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. There's lots I want to talk to you about tonight. Only 3 days to go to the general election. Thank God for that. That's all I can say. But look, before I start getting into the nitty-gritty of all of that stuff, I do just want to start by just pressing pause for a split second, if you will indulge me, just to give a shout-out to this wonderful little boy. Many of you will know who he is. This is Tony Hudgell. He is just absolutely fabulous. You will be familiar with his story. Very, very horrendously, he was abused when he was a little baby. The extent of his abuse meant that he had to have his legs amputated. He was, of course, adopted by a wonderful, wonderful family. And I can tell you now, the work that Tony has done ever since has been nothing short of inspirational. He's only 9 years old. And you might remember he was supposed to go to a Buckingham Palace garden party, but he got stuck in traffic. Can you believe it? So he missed that party. Anyway, look, he's now had his Buckingham Palace party. There he is. With Queen Camilla, and also as well he received the British Empire Medal for services to the prevention of child abuse. I just want to say a massive congratulations and send love to him, and his family is absolutely fabulous. So there you go. Look, let's get into the twists and turns then of the political campaign, shall we? I'm joined now by our political correspondent Olivia Utley. Good evening to you. 3 days to go. Bring us up to speed with what we've missed.
3 days to go, as you say. I've been on the Labour battle bus today following Keir Starmer. Now, Labour is campaigning in what used to be real Tory heartlands. I was in Buckinghamshire earlier, Oxfordshire as well. These are places with majorities of over 20,000 for the Conservatives. But Labour are so confident about this election, and unsurprisingly, when you look at the polls and what the bookies have to say, they are now thinking that they can pick up seats like Bletchley in Buckinghamshire or Chipping Norton. David David Cameron's old seat in Oxfordshire. That said, they are a little bit worried about the Conservatives talking up this idea of a Labour supermajority, because they're worried that Labour voters will get complacent. If you're a lifelong Labour voter living in a safe seat and you're hearing all this stuff about a Labour supermajority, or hearing that Labour are going odds on to win more than 400 seats in the polls, then the argument is you might not bother to go out and vote Labour. So that's something that Keir Starmer wants to guard against today. Meanwhile, you've got the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, campaigning in Stratford-on-Avon. Again, that used to be a really safe Tory seat. In 2019, Nadhim Zahawi, the former Chancellor, won it with a majority of about 20,000. But of course, the Conservatives are so nervous now about losing swathes and swathes of seats across the country that they are trying to firm up support in their Tory heartlands as well. So it's fighting now for these areas, these rural, leafy, green areas, mostly in the southeast of England, which Ed Davey too has his eye on. He's been bungee jumping today, another stunt from the Lib Dem leader. A little bit tortuous, I thought. His argument is that some people are making thinking of doing something which they've never done before on Thursday and voting Liberal Democrat, taking a leap of faith. So Davey is doing something which he's never done before and taking a leap of faith, literally, by this bungee jump. He is hoping to pick up sort of 50 or 60 seats for the Liberal Democrats, reversing essentially what happened after that Cameron-Clegg coalition. The Liberal Democrats are now down to, I think it's something like 12 or 13 seats in the House of Commons. So if they manage to win back those seats in the southeast and southwest of England, which they lost back in 2015, that would be seen as a really big victory for them.
Interesting stuff. Thank you very much for that, Olivia. Did you see, everyone, that bungee jump today? I mean, have we got a clip of it? Should we play it in case you missed it again? Look. Really? Lord Moylan, I'm a bit speechless, so I'll hand over to you. What do you think to that?
I think it's a joke. I mean, what it's an attempt to do, really, if you're serious, is to clean up the reputation of Ed Davey as somebody who was part of a coalition government and a minister in a coalition government, which he now tries to pretend, you know, he's attacking. You know, he was there for putting up the university fees. He was there in charge for a period of the Post Office, not the only minister in charge of the Post Office scandal, but he was for a time in charge of it. So he wants to present himself as a nice, lovely, rollicking, sweet person who had nothing to do with all of that. So it's trying to clean up his reputation. And I don't think it's really washing. This is a serious election. I think people are seriously worried about the direction of the country. And there's a real choice in front of them. And Ed Davey's not part of that choice, fundamentally. You know, if they, at the moment, they're not the third largest party in Westminster. The SNP is bigger than they are.
Yeah, but they're doing very well in the polls, Lib Dems.
Well, let's see what happens on Friday. But, I mean, his ambition is that he might get... If he gets more seats than the SNP, he'll score that as a win. Well, since the SNP only stands in Scotland, I don't think that's really, you know, much of a triumph. But that's the extent of his ambition. He's not a serious figure in this election. The choice is Conservative or Labour government. That's it.
I always ask you this at home, but are you, for example, a former sub-postmaster? When you see these kind of things, how does that make you feel? Of course, many people say that Mr Bates tried to meet with Mr Davey and that meeting was not forthcoming. Does it insult you? Do you think the past is the past, life moves on? Give me your thoughts. What do you make to it all?
I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it? Like, what is he thinking of? Who is advising him to do stunt after ridiculous stunt like this? I mean, it doesn't bother me. I don't care. What he's trying to do is desperately get somebody to notice him, because the truth is, not actually, this election, it's not even about Labour. It's all about the Tories, isn't it? This is the election where the country decides we've had enough of the Tories and we want them out. And as I say, Labour's only in the election because they've become moderate, mainstream, reasonable, and they're now electable. But, like, the Lib Dems are not in the election at all. I mean, who could tell you a single Lib Dem policy? Who cares about anything that they say or do?
I can tell you a Lib Dem policy. They want to strengthen social care, for example. And actually, whilst I think the bulk of what Ed Davey has done is absolutely, it's just embarrassing, really. If that was my dad, I would just be trying to discern him rapidly because I think it's cringeworthy. But one of the things that he has done, and it really had cut through with me, perhaps it did with some other parents, was when he did that piece with his son. I mean, it divided opinions. Some people have said that he shouldn't have even have done that. But actually, when he was talking with his son, who has additional needs, and he was talking about the social care sector and all the failures that have gone on there, and actually wanting to invest more money in resolving that sector, that was a sensible thing.
Don't you think that he's cheapened that with this kind of nonsense? Because I mean, this is not even just a one-off. I mean, I don't know how many he's done, but he's doing this kind of nonsense every day, isn't he? If he's actually a serious politician with serious things to say, and he wants to have a serious conversation with the country about his son's additional needs and other people with social care needs, like, how is he doing it any good by bungee jumping?
Yeah, and it's not just
take him seriously.
It's not just bungee jumping, is it? I mean, there he is now in his tight lycra, coming down a water slide. What else have I seen him do? I've seen him go down hills with his legs akimbo, on push bikes. I'm sure I will have missed some more antics that's gone on. He's there. I don't think that's a silly antic, actually. He's doing CPR. I think that's quite sensible.
I don't think that's an election stunt, actually. That's an old film of him doing CPR, and of course it is sensible, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that's doing in my montage of Ed Davey election gaffes, that CPR one, because that is a sensible one. I will give him credit for that.
Yeah.
Look, let's talk also then about Sir Keir Starmer, because he said if he does get elected as the Prime Minister, he's essentially going to down tools on a Friday night at 6 o'clock to spend time with his family. I can only assume that he knows that Dewberry Tavern opens on a Friday night and that he's choosing in to me to watch our goings-on for the day. That's good quality family
so
viewing.
Every good weekend kicks off.
Yeah, I don't blame him for doing that. But on a serious note, do you think that you can have this kind of strict line of work-life balance if you want to be Prime Minister?
No, but it is very difficult. I mean, any Prime Minister, anyone in a serious office like that, is going to struggle to have the right amount of time for their family and for their friends. Well, they will see their family, even if relations deteriorate to some extent. Almost worse is the fact they stop seeing their friends. They don't see their friends at all. They get cut off socially because the pressure of the job is so much that there's hardly ever any of that chance to have an evening out or an evening where you kick off your shoes or whatever it is that you would do with your friends. And it's going to be difficult for Keir Starmer, as it has been for nearly every other Prime Minister who's had a family, and he'll have to find his... To give him credit, he'll have to find, if he's Prime Minister, if he's elected, he will have to find his way through that, and it won't be easy straight off. But no, he will not be able to say, I'm switching off the mobile at 6 o'clock on a Friday. You know, let me know what happens on Monday morning.
Do you agree with that?
You can't be like that.
Yeah, I basically do agree with that. And Keir Starmer knows that. I mean, Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He was basically the Chief Executive of the Crown Prosecution Service with 7,000...
His father was a toolmaker.
7,000 staff, the bit he talks about less is £500 million budget, 7,000 staff, half of them lawyers. He's actually, you know, he's been at the heart of government. He's run big... serious organisations, like on a tiny fraction of the scale of being Prime Minister of the country. But he knows that if something happens at 6:30 on a Friday or 6:30 in the morning, I mean, it doesn't matter when it happens. If he needs to be disturbed, he'll be disturbed, and they won't think... I mean, they will think twice, but he's not going to get the time with his family that he would like.
So why say it then? Why say this is what I'm
that's really
quoting.
the interesting question.
Yeah, this is what I'm quoting. We've had a strategy in place.
And why say it in that emphatic way, as if it was realistic? It's not realistic.
Yeah, this is, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I will give you the quote. He's apparently told Virgin Radio, we've had a strategy in place and we'll try to keep to it, which we carve out really protected time for the kids. So on a Friday, and I've been doing this for years, I will not do a work-related thing. After 6 o'clock, pretty well come what may. He says there are a few exceptions, but that's what we do. So why say that?
Well, because what he's saying is, if we're not going to plan anything on a Friday night, I'll keep Friday night free for the family and we'll make a real effort to protect that. And I believe he has done that, and I believe he will do that. But he'll get a lot less Friday nights from next week onwards than he has been ever used to in the past, guaranteed, because stuff just happens, doesn't it?
Certainly does.
I wouldn't, if I was a Labour cabinet, hoping to be a Labour cabinet minister after the election, therefore be expecting the telephone to ring after 6 o'clock on a Friday. If you haven't been rung by 6 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't been called by 6 o'clock on Friday, you are not in Keir's cabinet.
There you go. And if you do want a bit of quality family time, get huddled round that sofa. Watch Dewbs & Co, because Dewberry Tavern does open at 6:45 every Friday. It is a start to your weekend, that's what I say. Look, well, let's try something a bit different on this programme, shall we? Because I often run polls on social media. I use Twitter and X, and many of you get in touch with me and say, well, Michelle, we can't even involve ourselves in this conversation because we don't have Twitter or X. Well, here you go. This one is for you. Let's try it, shall we? Because I'm wondering tonight, do you think Ed Davies' antics are convincing you to vote Lib Dem or not? If you agree, text yes. So what you have to do, this is a text thing, so you can get your telephones out. You can text GB yes or GB no. Quite self-explanatory there. If you think yes, do yes, and if you think no, say no. You text your answer to 63333. Now, I do have to be clear, there is a cost to this. Text will cost 50 pence per message, plus your standard network rate. Of course, you've got to be over 18, and if you've got your mum and dad's phone, you do have to ask their permission. If you're not 18, the vote closes at 6:45 p.m, and text sent after that will not be counted, but you might be charged for it. If you want full T's and C's, go to the website, and I'll read the results of that poll out before the end of the programme. After the break, I want to talk to you about the goings-on in France. Have you seen it? Macron called that snap election, didn't he? I've got to say, he has been well and truly humiliated by what happened on Sunday. Let's look at it after the break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
So, question is, what can we do to get young people to eat healthy food? Here's dietitian and nutrition consultant Helen Bond. Helen, what do you think?
Eating habits formed at this age tend to persist into later life. We know we're eating too much fat, sugar, salt, and not enough of the good things like fibre, fruits and vegetables, all of those things. So yes, we need to help this age group, so they have the skill set and they have the nutrition knowledge to take that forward.
Do you agree that it is impossible to eat healthily on a budget and quickly as well, or do you have any sort of fail-safe, affordable and very quick to prep meals that you'd recommend youngsters try?
It doesn't have to be expensive either, but you have to have those kind of cost-cutting hacks and those time-saving things in the kitchen. Make use, I always say, of things like peas, beans and lentils, which are a type of pulse, very inexpensive compared to meat, and yet they double up as one of your 5 a day, and also a great source of plant-based protein. If you overget milk as something, you have too much milk, maybe make some lattes.
I just wanted to throw a shoe at the TV, really, because was there nothing else on or nothing else available? The point being, there is an audience, there is obviously an appeal, there's obviously people are watching this stuff. So what are they doing? Are they watching and not cooking?
I think that's it. They're watching and maybe enjoying all the cookery programmes like I do. And I'm a typical person in the kitchen. I must have about 100 cookbooks. But sometimes when you are time poor, you've got to feed a family or you've got to feed yourself and everything, you don't really know where to start. And I think that's why apps and having things online for this younger audience makes it much more accessible. Start with one recipe and build it up from there. Like I said,
The People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs and Co. We're with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel remain. I've got the former Labour MP Sean Salmon and the Life Peer in the House of Lords, Daniel Moylan. I started my programme just with a little bit of niceness, you know. There's so much ridiculousness that goes on in this world. So I did put up a photograph at the top of the show. I'll just bring that up again. This, of course, I was saying it's Tony Hudgell. He couldn't make the garden party at Buckingham Palace because he got stuck in traffic. So I was just giving him a virtual high five and sending him a lot of love. And one of my viewers has just got in touch saying, can you just tell us who that little girl is in that picture as well? Well, yes, Layla O'Donovan, she is called. She's 11 years old. She also couldn't make that garden party either, very, very sadly. She is a brain tumour patient. And, of course, I wish her all the very best as well. And I do apologise. It's probably slightly rude of me not to mention her at the same time as Tony as well. But do you know what? Both of them just incredibly brave and inspirational children. And, again, I send them lots and lots of love. Look, speaking about things that are just very, how should we say this, amusing to some people, I've got to say, the situation over in France. You might be familiar with some of the goings on there. President Macron basically threw, I was going to say threw his toys out the pram, but let me just rephrase. He decided to do a bit of a shock election. It really caught people unaware. This was off the back of the results of the European election. He decided to let the French people have their say about what it is they want their country to look like. Well, he probably didn't predict, actually, that Marine Le Pen's party was then going to do what it actually did, because on Sunday, her party, the National Rally, they secured 33% of the vote. This has really sent ructions through a lot of people. It's been called a European earthquake. Of course, you know, the term far-right is being thrown out today more times than I've had cups of tea, and I've had a lot of them today. What do you make to it, Daniel Moylan?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to be very careful in saying what is going to happen now in Parliament in France, because these are first-round elections. They have second-round elections next Sunday. And the way in which it works in France, I can't explain it in detail, but they can do deals. And in the past, they've done these deals.
Let's just call them tactical voting, then people kind of know what
it's like tactical voting, where they have tactical candidate withdrawals, candidates pulling out and so on, and doing deals across constituencies. And in the past, they've used this mechanism to keep the Marine Le Pen party away from power. The difficulty this time is that she's got so many votes in the first round that it might be difficult for them to do that. Also, there was an astonishingly high turnout. It was a very unusual high turnout election.
66.7%.
Yeah,
that was 47.5% at the last one in 2022.
Yeah, so it's a big turnout, which also has an effect on the way in which the system works, because there are rules about turnout as well. So we can't be absolutely sure what's going to happen, whether she'll be able to, or her nominee, who is this young man called Bardella, will be able to form a government. We don't know that yet. What it is the breaking up in Western Europe, it's been going on for some time, and in Britain, of the sort of technocratic consensus about how we run the country without really having much connection with what people think. And that's breaking up in France in a very dramatic sort of way at the moment. And I think it will have very long-term ructions, whoever forms the government. You're right, Macron is very much a lame duck now.
Sean, what do you think to it?
Have they not got TV or the internet in France? I mean, it defies belief.
What does?
That Macron sees the Prime Minister of the UK being incredibly far behind in the poll for months and months on end, and calling a snap election and finding out that it doesn't get any better at all. It seems really terrible, and he's cruising for an absolute disaster that he could at least have put off for 6 months. Then he, Macron, does terribly in the European election and thinks, I'll do exactly the same as Rishi Sunak's done in the UK. And sure enough, he's got exactly the same result. I think when it comes to it, as we've heard, we don't know what's going to happen in the second round. My hunch is that the Marine Le Pen probably won't end up forming a government, but clearly she very, very possibly could. And that's never happened before.
You say, you know, are they not watching what happens in other countries, actually? I think there is such a huge amount of political arrogance that goes on with so many people right across the establishment. People throw this terminology around like far-right this, racist that, xenophobic that. They throw it around like confetti. And what they basically mean is if you have the audacity to want control of your borders, if you want the audacity to have defined immigration policies that are actually stuck to, to. If you don't want your communities and neighbourhoods to change beyond any recognition, when you've consistently voted against it, then if you fit into those categories, too many politicians, if you ask me, are calling those people far right. They are attacking them, they are smearing them, and in doing so, they're hoping to silence and suppress them. And what they're actually achieving is the exact opposite, because people have had enough of it now. Before, if you were called far right or whatever, it would be awful. You would think, oh gosh. Many people now, when they're called far right, it almost just makes them laugh, not because they're undermining the genuine far right or they think that's amusing or funny, but because the terminology has become so misused and so ridiculous that the things that it actually is used to describe now are, to many people, sensible policies such as controlling your border.
I think there's a lot of truth in that, and I think it's true what you say. It's true all over Europe, certainly, and maybe all over the world. I think it's more true in France than it is here. I think it's a problem here. I think there is a tendency for political elites in the UK, in all the big parties, when they look, for instance, at Nigel Farage, when they look at reform, to be a bit sneery about it, a bit contemptuous.
A bit.
And not to think for themselves. Well, hang on, these are millions of British citizens who are minded to support these ideas. So maybe we better think about that a bit more carefully and take it a bit more seriously. But having said that, just to finish, just on the other hand, I think if you talk about Marine Le Pen, I think the things that you've described are only part of that story. I think that is a racist party.
Why?
I think because if you look at the things that Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella and Jean-Marie Le Pen before, the seam right through that movement ever since it's been.
But hang on, I thought she got rid of her dad.
Well, her dad's not the leader of the party anymore.
Because she outed him.
But it's she says and has said many of the same things that he said.
Like what?
So I haven't got quotes memorised.
Well, how do you memorise that they're racist then if you can't remember what they said?
Well, because I remember that they've said racist things. I just haven't memorised the racist things.
So you can remember that they've said racist things, but you can't remember what the racist things they've said are?
Yeah.
Think that's a bit weird?
Not at all. Not at all, no.
OK. What was you going to say, Daniel?
Well, I was going to say this French thing is partly about the far right, but it's also about the far left. I mean, the second biggest group, the second biggest winners in this election that took place yesterday is a motley collection of left-wing parties who are not nice, cosy, sort of social democrat types. They are extreme left-wingers. And they have done very well too. What's happened is, if you like, the centre has collapsed. Now, that centre consists partly of Macron's party, which has sort of gone down to 20%, but also consists of the traditional old-fashioned Republican, what we would think of as like British Conservatives type party. Admittedly, they did vanish quite a lot some years ago, but the thing is the polarisation as much as the move to the right that's of interest. So I think just looking at through the Le Pen side of the story misses something important. The question you haven't asked, Michelle, which I suppose I'll suggest to you, is how will this have an effect on people going to the polls on Thursday?
In this country?
You sound surprised, like we don't have the TV and the internet here, like Sean said.
What? Do I think that the outcome in France will affect people voting here?
Yes.
I don't think that someone is going to go to the streets and say, do you know what, I was going to vote for Ed Dewbs because I saw his bungee jump, and now because I've seen what happened with Marine Le Pen in France, I'll change my vote. No. But what I do think is reflective, and you see it all the time, there is this notion that if you want the things that I've just described, I won't repeat them, I don't want to send you all to sleep at home, but let's just simplify them and say control of borders. If you want that, the smearing that goes on and the sneering that goes on and the calls of racism, and with all due respect to you, I mean, you're telling me how racist these parties are, and then when I ask you to explain why, you can't remember, but yet you've memorised the label of racism in your mind, but you don't know why that is. And I think this happens to a lot of people.
It's a bit more than that. So I had a French grandfather who lived in a suburb on the edge of Marseille, which is a very, very mixed, big city with an awful lot of social problems and huge immigration. And So I spent a lot of time there. I you know, throughout my life, I've kind of met these people. He was well to the right, my grandfather. He knew a lot of these people. I spent time with these people. I didn't memorise what they said, but like I know a racist when I meet one.
But then I just think that this label and this smearing, it is absolutely replicated in this country as well. I'll give you a tiny little example. Today, a newspaper tweeted out a video on Twitter, X, and it was absolutely awful, and it was what I would describe as absolutely unacceptable, vile racism. There was ladies walking down the street that were Muslim. They had, you know, their headscarves on and all the rest of it, and people, whoever was filming this video, was running up and snatching off their headscarf. I mean, absolutely disgusting, horrendous behaviour. I really don't condone that at all. So they tweeted this out, and people all very, very quickly in the comments were saying, this is what Nigel Farage et al. Have created. I wonder what party this person is going to be voting for. Well, actually, when you played the video, what you actually heard was the person that were doing the snatching was a lady speaking in Arabic, saying something about what was going on in Iran, and ladies there being forced to wear the headscarf, and here we have a democracy and you don't have to wear it. It was all of that kind of thing. So it absolutely was not the story that had been painted and absolutely echoed within the tweets. And I found that absolutely fascinating. So do I think Marine Le Pen will change voting outcomes on Thursday? No. But I also do think that what's going on there with the smearing of what I would call often very just ordinary people with concerns is being echoed on the streets in Britain. And I, for one, will be personally fascinated to see the outcome of the likes of Reform UK after the election here and see what happens there. And anyway, look, speaking about France and immigration and borders and all the rest of it, after the break, I want to look at the antics in Glastonbury. Did you see it? A so-called Banksy artwork, it was a blow-up migrant small boat, was being passed around to cheers and all the rest of it. Let's look at it after the break.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be some showery rain around, but also some bright sunny spells. But first thing, for some, it is going to be a bit cloudy and a bit damp because of a frontal system that has already pushed its way in from the northwest and is currently making its way southeastwards as we go overnight. So eastern, southern parts of England likely to have quite a bit of cloud and some drizzly rain as we go through the night and head towards dawn tomorrow. Elsewhere, some clear spells mixed in, a few showers possible, but temperatures really aren't going to drop a huge amount, particularly in the east and southeast where we have that thicker cloud. It is going to be a pretty mild start to the day tomorrow. But like I said, a cloudy, damp, drizzly start here. Further north, a bit of a brighter start, particularly across eastern parts of Scotland. A good deal of sunshine early on here. Further west, we will see some showery rain pushing its way in, and that's going to turn a bit more persistent, a bit more widespread as we go through the day. Across Northern Ireland, much of northern England, through the morning, it's looking mostly dry, some bright sunny spells. Watch out for a few showers across parts of Wales, perhaps northwest England, and then a real west-east split across much of central southern England with that cloud and that drizzly rain I mentioned across eastern parts. Most of that, though, will clear away as we go through the day, and so it is going to turn a little bit drier and brighter here. Further north, a slightly different story. Yes, there will be some sunny breaks around, but I am expecting some showery rain to push its way in across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of this could be on the heavy side. Temperatures around average for the time of year, just about scraping into the low 20s towards the south. Wednesday looks like a pretty wet day for many of us. The rain may not be especially heavy, but it's going to be fairly widespread. Most places likely to see some wet weather at times, could even be some low clouds, some hill fog and some strong blustery winds to watch out for as well. For many, Thursday looks like it will be a brighter day, but could be quite windy for some of us before more rain on Friday. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is down to a single lane southbound. Junctions 7 to 8, just south of Larkhill. Everyone's been funneled into the inside lane. Emergency repair works are taking place following an earlier collision. In Lancashire, northwest of Ormskirk, the Southport Road, the A470, shut midway between Scaresbrick and Ormskirk at the scene of an accident. And on the M6 in Warwickshire, just north of Coventry, a lane shut southbound of the Corley services after a car was on fire. fire. The left lane's also closed on the main carriageway. Grosvenor Road in central London shut westbound following an accident. And on the public transport front in London, there are severe delays on the Elizabeth line and of Abbey Wood to Whitechapel, and minor delays between Whitechapel and Shenfield, all down to a faulty train earlier on at Custom House. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Alongside me, my panel remains. Paul says, thank you for that story about Tony Hudgell. He'd never even heard of that little boy before. Yeah, I honestly advise all of you to go and look up his story. It is just absolutely inspirational. That's the only word I've got for that little boy. Andrew says, Michelle, can I just ask what planet is Starmer on? Saying that he's not going to work past 6 o'clock in the evening. Credit where it's due, Andrew. It wasn't every day. It was only a Friday. Does that make it better for you or not? Someone else says, Michelle, can we change his theme tune to Dolly Parton's 9 to 5? That should be the Labour anthem. Not sure that one will fly. Anyway, look, speaking of music, it was Glastonbury this weekend. Was you there? Is it your kind of thing or not? Well, one of the things that got people talking there was this so-called artwork from Banksy, apparently. It was a mocked-up small boat with migrants in it. It was passed around the festival goers. Look at that. They kind of... I mean, it's almost like crowd surfing it. I've heard this described as epic, momentous, historical. Many people actually celebrating that. And if you can see it, I mean, I think it's pretty damn vile, basically. So it really has divided opinion. I've got to say, our Home Secretary, he was speaking out about it as well. Let's have a listen.
These are the pictures of it. We now know this was a Banksy art installation. How do you know what that is commentary about?
There are a bunch of people there joking and celebrating about criminal actions which costs lives. People die. People die in the Mediterranean. They die in the Channel. This is not funny. It is vile. It is a celebration of the loss of life in the Channel.
Daniel Moylan, what do you think to it?
I think Glastonbury, the whole Glastonbury thing is pretty disgusting, to be perfectly frank. It's where sort of rich middle classes go to wallow in excrement while sort of popping off on weed and reassuring themselves they're all good people because they can enjoy a good left-wing joke.
I think you just sound
all I want to hear, what I want to hear from Banksy is very straightforward. If you want to come out and say, Banksy, that the criminal gangs who are charging these people £3,000, £4,000, £6,000 or selling them into bonded labour, that the criminal gangs should be rounded up, arrested and crushed, and that every lawful method should be used to close down their trade, then I would be with you 100%. You say that first, and then I will listen to your talk about compassion. But if this is what the message of this is. But that's what I want to hear these people say. These are the evil people doing this. Stop attacking our government, whichever of any party. Stop attacking Britain about this. Let's go for these criminal gangs, and you should be out there leading that. And this should not be, in my view, a sort of joke installation with a load of people pumped up on weed and drink.
What do you think to it, Sean?
I don't think it was very well thought through. I think he was almost certainly, given what we know about Banksy and what he's like and what he cares about, he was trying to make a serious point. I suspect, I mean, obviously, I don't know Banksy, I've never met Banksy, so I don't want to speak for him, but...
You could be Banksy.
Well...
Do we know who he is yet?
I think people know, but I don't.
Right.
But it's not you. Can you just tell it? Can we just have this out?
I categorically deny the rumour that I am Banksy.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Just so we know.
He's trying to make a serious point from the point of view of the asylum seeker. That's where he's coming from. Clearly, it's not intended as a joke, and James cleverly, pretty preposterously jumping on the bandwagon, saying it's disgraceful, they're all laughing about it. It was obviously a bad idea to try and make a serious point like that at Glastonbury late at night when there is a very, obviously very, very jovial atmosphere, to say the least, and the pictures look terrible.
I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. Viewers will remember, it was only recently, a little girl, I'm sure she was about 7, she was trampled to death on one of those small boats. So whilst you would be aware of that knowledge, and you would then sit there and think, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it to a festival, this kind of mocked-up boat with these people on, and somehow think that that is cool. I mean, to me, there's something not quite right with your thought process there. And let me tell you now, ladies and gents, right, because the double standards that exist in our society at the moment, can you imagine, just imagine for a nanosecond, there was a huge Reform UK rally, I think it was in Birmingham yesterday. Can you imagine for a single millisecond if somebody in that audience, which by the way I don't think anyone ever would have done, but if anyone would have even have contemplated doing anything like that, can you imagine what the front pages would have said about those people in attendance at that rally? But because this is people that perhaps lean perhaps to the left of the political spectrum, then passing around that blow-up migrant boat is OK. Apparently that's sending a message to the establishment. I'm going to take a break and calm down. I'm going to calm down, everybody. Let me tell you this, right? I've got a really staggering story after the break. If you've got children or grandchildren, do you think it's safe now for them to play out after dark like what many of us used to when we were kids? I'll show you why I'm asking in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recent polling suggests dentistry has become the hardest NHS service for patients to access, within NHS treatments still 15% lower than pre-pandemic levels. So a YouGov survey reveals that more than 70% of Brits describe seeing the dentist as difficult, compared with 64% for GPs and 42% for A&E services. One British man, get this, he even took to flying 10,000 miles for dental care, saying the extra time and money spent was far less hassle than trying to get an appointment on the NHS. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs. And a shocking 1/5 of UK adults have also admitted to trying DIY dentistry, including the old trick of tying string around a wobbly tooth and slamming it in the door so it comes out. So should people be more careful when taking their teeth into their own hands?
That is one of the problems. Obviously, population growth makes it much more difficult for people to access NHS services, but they need to then catch up on the other side with dental services and increase the amount of dentists and access to dentistry, and especially NHS dentistry, obviously.
What's the cut-off age for free dentistry on the NHS?
So it is 18 years old, but there are exemptions around maternity, pregnancy. There's some free care around pregnancy.
We saw some data a few weeks back about the number one cause for child admission into A&E is tooth decay. I mean, that was shocking when I read it.
It's really bad, and what happens is people, kids with multiple decayed teeth, they basically have to be put under general anaesthetic, and then all those rotted teeth have to be extracted under general anaesthetic. Like, if those baby teeth start going crooked, then the adult teeth start going crooked as well. Right. So it is important to look after the baby teeth. It's really important. I think they should make it more central to their policies, definitely.
The People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This election night, we're putting on a party.
And you are invited.
We'll be here with you.
Following all the twists and turns.
As well as all the live reaction from our election night watch party.
With our GB News lineup.
And as morning breaks, we'll be here with breakfast from 6 a.m.
As it becomes clear who the winners and the losers really are.
Vote 2024.
Thursday, the 4th of July.
Only on GB News.
Britain's election channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. The former Labour MP Sean Simon and the live peer in the House of Lords Daniel Moylan remain alongside me. Look, I don't know where you used to holiday when you was a kid, but Scarborough was a particular favourite and still is, I think, to many of us northerners. Anyway, there's reports coming out from there now that apparently lawless drug and knife culture means that many people living there now have decided it's not safe for their children to be out on the streets. Now, I really found that quite interesting because another story that caught my eye is what they're up to in Sheffield. Is a proposal now, and it's like what some people are calling like a mocked-up, almost like what many people, their words, not mine, are calling like a council estate. And it would be this safe kind of environment where people used to knock about when they were kids, in and around their home estate, literally their own neighbourhood, where you used to be able to kick a ball, have fun, play, and it was safe. And I think if we've got to the point where we have to mock up streets so that people can play football. I nearly said kick your ball in because that's what I call it for my 3-year-old. But if you can play football in these mocked-up streets because the real ones are not safe, that is not good.
Well, you could go straight on from Glastonbury, couldn't you? I mean, you know, go and relive your youth knocking a football. Middle classes could go relive their youth knocking a football round against a garage door, I suppose. I've no idea what this thing is about. I'm very worried about Scarborough. I'm worried about our seaside towns. I think one of the problems, you know, I think going back a little bit in history, Boris was this is what a large part of this, what levelling up was meant to be about, because everyone recognised that our seaside towns were failing. And, of course, the fact that it got blown off course by COVID and, you know, and then Boris was gone and the whole thing is terribly sad, because the seaside towns could be really important. Not necessarily. I know the holiday business is gone. Everyone's, you know, they're all on the continent now and so on. I know that most of the holiday business is gone that you enjoyed when you were younger. But nonetheless, they've got lots of attractions and some of them are very beautiful. And there should be a strategy for our seaside towns that would involve jobs. When you have jobs, you've got people, young people get involved in things and the whole thing improves generally. I would worry about it.
Yeah, sure.
It isn't the whole of Scarborough, let's be fair. This is one particular patch of Scarborough we're talking about. Scarborough is still a nice place to be.
Sean?
Two things. So on the one hand, kind of on the policy level, that there's been an increase in crime because there's not enough police on the beat, because people have not got enough money in their pockets as they've had previously. And as we know, if you start to fix those things, you will be able to tackle crime. There's lots of evidence about that. But I do think that there's also been a trend in the last 20, 30 years in this country, of which there's also a lot of evidence, of parents becoming more and more and more overprotective of their children. Like 20 years ago, 80% of kids used to walk to school. Now it's 80% of kids who go to school in the car with their parents. And kids did used to just go out and play and come home when it was dark. And the vast majority of those kids, the vast majority of the time, were fine. And actually, you know, they learned a lot, and they learned a lot about growing up and other kids and other people and relationships that they don't necessarily learn in the bedroom.
No, but there's a lot.
Computer games.
It feels, anyway, there's a lot more wrong-uns roaming the streets these days.
I'm not sure if that is true. I feel like, you know, I grew up in the 80s in Birmingham, and there was a lot of wrong-uns on the street, and you could get into trouble, but you could also learn to keep out of trouble.
True. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. One of the most horrendous stories that I remember even discussing. Do you remember that? It wasn't really not that long ago. It was that little girl. I'm sure she was only about 9 years of age. And she was taken outside of Harrods. And, I mean, if you don't know London very well, just take my word for it, that is quite a well-to-do area. A little girl was snatched in broad daylight by some guy. She was then drugged and sexually assaulted. Thank goodness she was found and reunited with her parents safe and well, although many hours later. I mean, did that stuff, some of that stuff used to happen with the way it happens now? Or perhaps, I don't know, we're more aware of it now because of social media, perhaps. Let me know your thoughts. And do you live in a seaside town? I'd love to know what you think to how they seem to be declining. And do you holiday there anymore? Because if we want seaside places to thrive, then it means that all of us have to spend our money holidaying in them. Do you still do that? or not. And I won't even state the obvious, by the way, about how many of the seaside hotels have been turned over to asylum seeker accommodations. No, I'll zip my mouth on that one. Instead, I will tell you, if you got involved on the poll, earlier on I was asking you about Ed Davies' antics, things like the bungee jumping and all the rest of it. I asked you, has that made you more likely to vote Lib Dem or not? Get this, everybody, 6% of you said yes, those antics are more likely to make you vote Lib Dem. Luckily, many of you have a lot of sense. 94% of you texted in and said no, those antics are not more likely to make you vote Lib Dem. Look, that is all I've got time for. Thank you if you got involved with that, and thank you to everyone that's watched and listened. I very much appreciate your company, as I appreciate both of your companies this evening. So thank you too. Look, we're going to get through it, everybody. We've only got 3 days to go. And don't forget, I will be live at that election party in Essex. We're going to do things slightly differently here on GB News. Oh, yes, we are. Cannot wait for it. But for now, that's all I've got time for. Thank you very much. Don't go anywhere, though, because Camilla Tomonley is up next. Night-night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Looking ahead to tomorrow, and there will be some showery rain around, but also some bright sunny spells. But first thing, for some, it is going to be a bit cloudy and a bit damp because of a frontal system that has already pushed its way in from the northwest and is currently making its way southeastwards as we go overnight. So eastern, southern parts of England likely to have quite a bit of cloud and some drizzly rain as we go through the night and head towards dawn tomorrow. Elsewhere, some clear spells mixed in, a few showers possible, but temperatures really aren't going to drop a huge amount, particularly in the east and southeast where we have that thicker cloud. It is going to be a pretty mild start to the day tomorrow. But like I said, a cloudy, damp, drizzly start here. Further north, a bit of a brighter start, particularly across eastern parts of Scotland. A good deal of sunshine early on here. Further west, we will see some showery rain pushing its way in, and that's going to turn a bit more persistent, a bit more widespread as we go through the day. Across Northern Ireland, much of northern England, through the morning, it's looking mostly dry, some bright sunny spells. Watch out for a few showers across parts of Wales, perhaps northwest England, and then a real west-east split across much of central southern England with that cloud and that drizzly rain I mentioned across eastern parts. Most of that, though, will clear away as we go through the day, and so it is going to turn a little bit drier and brighter here. Further north, a slightly different story. Yes, there will be some sunny breaks around, but I am expecting some showery rain to push its way in across parts of Scotland, northern England and Northern Ireland, and some of this could be on the heavy side. Temperatures around average for the time of year, just about scraping into the low 20s towards the south. Wednesday looks like a pretty wet day for many of us. The rain may not be especially heavy, but it's going to be fairly widespread. Most places likely to see some wet weather at times, could even be some low clouds, some hill fog and some strong blustery winds to watch out for as well. For many, Thursday looks like it will be a brighter day, but could be quite windy for some of us before more rain on Friday. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. The M74 in South Lanarkshire is down to a single lane southbound. Everyone's been funneled into the inside lane 7 to 8 just south of Larkhall for emergency repairs. South York